Speaking of nothing, where's Bud?
Well, it's fall, so you know another school year is beginning, which means your brother is upstairs trying on another persona in hopes of attracting a girl.
He has as much chance of finding a date this year as the cast of Rock does getting served at Denny's.
Let's rock.
Thanks, Dad.
Can I get a open?
Whoa, Bundy!
No Man presents, live from the nudie bar, the Married with Children podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Married with Children podcast. This is Luigi, and I've learned my country sayings like ornery and I thought you was 18.
Hi, everybody. This is Chris, and it's the fall, so you know what I'm doing. I'm sitting down in my basement trying to figure out which one of my personas in an attempt to attract a girl is my favorite. Is it Joey Buttafuoco, Grandmaster B, Indiana Bundy, Tito Bundy, Butterachi, or this year's persona, Billy Ray Bundy? Country is in, you know. Damn straight, Missy.
Okay, so today we are reviewing Proud to Be Your Bud, Season 8, Episode 3. Original air date September 19th, 1993. Directors Tony Singletary. Writers Stacy Lipp and Michael Moy, so we know this is going to be a good one. Special guest stars Michelle Nicholas as Libby. So, the other Bundys think that Bud is flipped out when they overhear his basement conversation with his cool alter ego who arrives from another universe and shows Bud the tactics on picking up women. Meanwhile, Al has a personal battle of his own with a voice-over phone service to order a purchase for a new spare part for the Dodge, which in this case is an alternator.
Tonight, when Bud strikes out again, he swears off women forever.
Sounds like a good plan. Wish I thought of it.
An all-new Married with Children. Then, when father and son drive each other crazy, they turn to therapy.
This is the perfect opportunity for a little role reversal.
Richard Lewis and Don Rickles are trading places.
I think I'll go upstairs and I'll wash my hair with 25 pounds of moose.
Daddy Dearest.
I think I'm going crazy.
An all-new episode following Married with Children tonight on Fox.
Welcome back to the Married with Children podcast. Last week we heard our inaugural episode for the new Married with Children podcast team that's working on this, now that our beloved Alex has moved on to other ventures, and we wish him well. So today, the team of Luigi and Chris is having its inaugural episode, both Dan-less, Jamie-less, Alex-less, as well as our team of Stephen, Annabelle, and Tyler. So we hope you like our show, and we'll get started. Now, Chris, this is your first time on the Married with Children podcast, and you've been a big fan on the Facebook page. So why don't you tell the fans a little bit about yourself and how you got into Married with Children?
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to. Yeah, so I guess I'm 35, and I have really been watching Married with Children for as long as I can remember. And it's kind of funny because I have no idea why my parents let me watch the show when I was 4 or 5 years old. It's kind of ironic because I came from a pretty conservative family. You know, we were in church 2 or 3 times a week, but then Married with Children was our guilty pleasure on Sunday evenings, you know. So, and it's like,
that's great.
You know, and it's like this particular episode that we're going to be talking about today, I was 8 years old when it aired. And half of the jokes I didn't get at the time, but I get them now, you know. But I was just like, this morning I was searching back in my memory banks, and I was trying to remember the first episode that I ever remember seeing. And I have to say it's probably the season 2 You Better Watch Out episode. It's a legendary episode with the Lakeside Mall, you know, and where Santa falls to his death. And I must have been about 5 or maybe 6 years old at the time. And thank God I already knew that Santa wasn't real. If not, that episode probably would have traumatized me for life.
Yeah, you know, on that episode, they have that black screen that comes up. It says, like, you know, the following depicts a Bundy Christmas. Viewer discretion is advised. So that, I remember seeing that for the first time, and I was like, I've never seen this before.
Yep. Yeah, man. It's just like, it's so funny, but I have no idea why I was allowed to watch the show, but I was. We watched it every week faithfully, and I really started watching it live as it happened, probably around season 5, I would say. So most of the episodes from around season 5 on, I saw like the Sunday that they premiered. I mean, my favorite episode in the whole series is in season 5. It's the "You Better Shop Around" one, the 2-part supermarket episode. It's a very, very famous episode. It's my personal favorite. I mean, between them moving into the supermarket and Al quote unquote shopping, where he's just following the girl around and dropping stuff. It just kills me. It's so funny. But yeah, I've been a fan of the show for roughly 30 years now, and I have no idea how, but I managed to not find the podcast until about a year and a half ago. I joined about a year and a half ago, and have been following ever since. And I'm really enjoyed listening to Alex and Jamie, Dan, JP, Jerry, and certainly you and Annabelle and everyone else who's contributed to the show in one way or the other along the way. So very happy to join you today.
Yeah, and we're really excited to have you. As you know, at least to our listeners, I mean, Chris knows this. We have now 3 teams of people who do these recordings now, and we do this so that we can produce a show every week for the next few years, and also not put the burden all on one person to have to do the recording and the editing. And I hope everyone realizes, Alex was doing all of that for 3.5 years. So kudos to him. I really tip my hat to him because it's a lot of work. And since we announced that we were taking over the podcast, we really got the true behind-the-scenes look at everything that it takes to pull off one of these. So we hope to produce as quality a product as Alex did. We're going to try our best. We're going to lose a little bit of the consistency of hearing the same people review things week by week. But these recording teams, we're sort of all in sync. We communicate regularly. We're working off the same set of notes. We have a schedule that we work with. So we're really trying to give you exactly what Alex did and complete his vision for him. So again, thank you, Alex. We really appreciate everything you did, and thank you for giving us this podcast. Okay, so let's get underway. The title for this episode, Proud to Be Your Bud, comes from a popular Budweiser commercial that aired in 1993.
This is your world, genuine and true. You're the one who keeps coming through, because you're giving it your best. Proud to be your bud, Budweiser. Proud to be your bud. Proud to be your bud. Ooh, yeah. Proud to be your bud. Proud to be your bud.
So Kelly walks in and complains about being with stupid people.
I am fed out to here with stupid people. A customer comes into the diner and he asks for the Norwegian salmon. Then he wants to know if it's fresh. I said, "Hey, chucklehead, this is Chicago. This is not Norwegia, okay?" Nothing is fresh. Well, I shouldn't say nothing.
Now, Kelly is wearing her uniform from the Kelly Doesn't Work Here Anymore episode, so we haven't seen her in her waitress uniform in a little while. So, Chris, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first thing that crossed my mind when she walked in was just her hairstyle is a lot different, referring to like season 6 and 7. I know Alex has mentioned a lot in the past about Kelly, the classic Kelly appearance that most people think of. Generally, they're talking about Kelly from seasons 4, 5, and 6. Well, that Kelly is completely gone from this point forth. Her hair's a lot shorter, and she just looks a lot different. You mentioned her statement about making fun of stupid people or whatever. And the thing I love best about Kelly Bundy and the writing that the writers have for Christina Applegate is she's a lot like people in real life, because a lot of times the dumbest person in the room usually thinks they're the smartest person. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but Kelly here, messes up a very famous phrase, fed out to hear with stupid people or with stupid people wrong. And she gets that wrong. She's making fun of stupid people, but she gets it wrong herself.
Fed up as opposed to fed out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But,
yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I don't know if we got to the point where she turns around yet, but did you notice that the handprint on her butt didn't really make sense? When she turns around, like the where the handprint is on her backside doesn't really make sense. Like someone would have to be standing next to her and like standing over her and reach down and slap her butt, but that's not how it would be. Like your palm print would be the upside down of how it is in real life. But I don't know. That stood out for me.
That's a good point. Maybe it was Vladi, from episode 1, right?
It might have been. I know Kelly wishes it was Vladi from episode 1. But yeah, it's just like I thought about that. I was like, the props person that did that. Of course, they didn't actually slap Christina Applegate's butt. They just put a palm print on the skirt itself. But they didn't really think about how you would be standing when you would slap a girl's butt or slap a girl's behind, I kind of laughed at that when I saw it.
Yeah. So Kelly and Peg talk about Bud's love prospects for the year.
Speaking of nothing, where's Bud?
Well, it's fall. So another school year is beginning, which means your brother is upstairs trying on another persona in hopes of attracting a girl.
He has as much chance of finding a date this year as the cast of Rock does getting served at Denny's.
So another school year is beginning. There's this joke about how Bud has these different personas. Kelly makes a joke. She says he has as much of a chance as finding a date as the cast of Rock does for getting served at Denny's. If you recall, and now, as a fan of the show, and you were watching it live during this time, do you remember that incident that happened at Denny's?
I don't remember that specific incident, but I definitely remember some issues that Denny's had around that time period. I remember that they, correct me if I'm wrong, but they had, I don't know if it was one Denny's or what, but they had instituted a policy that like black people had to prepay on their meals. And of course, this didn't go over well, and I believe they ended up getting sued, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's true. There were a bunch of different incidents. The specific one for this, now remember, this episode is airing in September of 1993. Mm-hmm. It was shot in August. In May of that year, there was an incident in a Denny's in Annapolis, Maryland, where 6 blacks U.S. Secret Service agents were forced to wait an hour for service while their white companions were seated immediately. So Denny's got a lot of bad press over that. They were tapping into that. Now, this episode, again, Michael Moy contributed to it, who is black American. So, he's injecting some humor and also making a comment on present-day culture in terms of what's happening. And, it's very poignant, obviously, today, because it's something that 30 years later, we're still dealing with incidents like that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, Rock was a American comedy drama series that aired from August 1991 to May 1994. It starred Charles S. Dutton as a Baltimore garbage collector, Rock Emerson, and Ella Joyce as his wife, Eleanor. And it was part of Fox's Sunday night lineup with Married with Children. So that was, I think, one of the other tie-ins. They're trying to market other Fox shows at the exact same time. One thing I do remember about Rock was they had a promotion at some point where they actually aired a live episode, and the point of that was it was like one of the first episodes that aired live probably since the 1950s, since like the days of the Honeymooners. It's just a little tidbit about Rock that I remember. So, Bud walks down the stairs, and he comes down looking like a cowboy.
Let me guess. Billy Ray Bundy.
Damn straight, Missy. Country is in.
Well, then what country are you?
Yeah, I thought that was totally funny. I grew up in Texas, and, if you've ever been to Texas or if you've heard of any Texas jokes, it's always that all Texans are cowboys, and, we go to rodeos and ride horses to work every day. And a lot of those stereotypes are overblown, but we do go to rodeos every year, and we dress very similar to how Bud is dressed right there. I don't know if he's Billy Ray Bundy or Yosemite Sam, as Al says later in the episode, or what, but that's how a lot of us dress. when we go to the rodeos, at least.
Now, I've chewed my weight in Red Man. I've learned my country sayings like ornery, and I thought you was 18. So, as I live and barely breathe in these jeans, I'll be riding the country charts tonight.
So he says that he's chewed his weight in Red Man. I don't know what that was, but maybe you might enlighten us, Chris?
Isn't that a type of chewing tobacco, I think? If I'm not mistaken? Okay.
Yes, I had to look it up because, I grew up in New York City, so
yeah.
A lot of this stuff is foreign to me.
Yeah. I don't do chewing tobacco. I remember seeing those at stores, though, like at Walmart and Target even. I think even to this day, like I said, I've never chewed on chewing tobacco in my life, but I do remember seeing those.
Yeah. So Kelly makes a comment.
Well, I've got to admit, it's better than last year. Remember, he bought that wig, gained 30 pounds, and called himself Joey Buttafuoco?
I remember the year before he had bought a wig, gained 30 pounds, and called himself Joey Buttafuoco. So, you just talked about Texas. So this incident happened actually very close to where I grew up. This is the Joe Buttafuoco, Amy Fisher story. Joey Buttafuoco was a auto body shop owner from Long Island who had a sexual relationship with a minor, Amy Fisher. She went and shot his wife, Mary Jo, in the head, and Mary Jo survived. She survived to this day. It was all over the tabloids. I know it made national news, but if you were around, especially the New York City area, during that time period, it was on the front page of like the Daily News and the New York Post every single day.
Yeah,
the infamous Long Island Lolita.
Yeah, I remember that story.
So Al walks in.
Peg, I must be hallucinating. I could have swore that Yosemite Sam just passed me.
Yosemite Sam! It's Yosemite Sam! Yosemite! Yeah, Yosemite Sam! The roughest, toughest He-Man, stuffest hombre has ever crossed the Rio Grande. And I ain't no mamby-pamby. Now all of you skunks, clear out of here!
And he says that Bud looks like Yosemite Sam.
Yep.
Now, in our last episode, in episode 802, we did talk a little bit about, it was a little bit of like a Looney Tunes type of element to the show, and we talked about Foghorn Leghorn. So if you listen to episode 2 of this season, you would have heard that commentary. So we've gone through another Looney Tunes character.
Yep. Can I comment on Al's black pants for a second?
Go ahead, yeah.
They just look weird as heck, man. I know in the last couple of seasons, Alex has pointed out, that weird purple shirt that Al starts wearing in the second half of the show, which I totally agree with what Alex said. I'm not a fan of the purple shirt, but these black pants just look weird as heck. I mean, he's wearing his normal shirt. I mean, that's just about the normal shirt, the traditional classic shirt that Al wears. But I don't know what's up with those pants. Where's the brown pants at, Al? Come on, man.
So Al comes in and talks about trouble in finding an alternator for his Dodge.
Oh, well, as you know, I've had a wee peck of trouble finding an alternator for my Dodge.
Yes, and a deodorant that your body won't reject.
And a wife that my body won't reject. Anyway, after painstaking research to find this part, a bum told me to call Irv's World of Junk in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. So you know what this means? It means I'm going to get my part. All I got to do is call 800 head-on.
Welcome to Irv's World of Junk.
Now, in the modern world of 2020, this is very poignant because if you think about the way things were 30 years ago, there was no real internet that people used to buy goods and services. So, usually you have to buy things from a catalog or from like a call center. So this is stuff that I remember. They're going to go through this whole joke about, being on a call with that call attendant. It's like press 1 for this and press 2 for that. And, today a lot of that stuff is done with artificial intelligence.
Yep.
But back then, and like you can talk and you can say, give me an operator. But back then, if you had one of those attendants, you actually had to wait for them to finish and to hit the number. It was still very much an analog world that we lived in. So, I think that the joke, looking at it through the prism of today it's funny, but it's also a great time capsule because the world isn't like that anymore.
Yep. And, as far as, like you were just saying, as far as looking for obscure parts and everything, I just actually went through a situation here at my house. This is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I had a rat here in the house, and it got up underneath my dishwasher and chewed a hole through one of the hoses. And this specific hose is so obscure that you can't even find it at Home Depot or Lowe's. I went to Home Depot, Lowe's, I went to Ace Hardware, I went to all these different places. None of them carried it. And the only way to find the hose was I'd either have to basically order from the manufacturer or find an old dishwasher that someone was looking to throw away. So 30 years ago, I would have been up a creek, but I just went to my Facebook neighborhood group, the neighborhood I live in, and I posted, anybody looking to get rid of an old dishwasher? And of course, someone said, yeah, we're sitting ours out, and I got the hose off of it. So, but it's amazing how times should change. Had that happened 30 years ago, I would have probably either had to gone to a junkyard or buy a whole new dishwasher or something.
So now we get to Irv's World of Junk.
Welcome to Irv's World of Junk.
Hey, Irv, it's Al Bundy here.
If you'd like these instructions in Spanish, press 1. For French, press 2.
Don't you love these things?
For Cajun, press 4. And for English, press 5. You have pressed 5. You speak English. If your car is Swedish, press 1. If your car is Japanese, press 2. If your car is Japanese, but made in America, in a patronizing attempt to pretend we have a viable automobile industry, press 3.
Now, what's interesting about this, they mention a specific place called Woonsocket, Rhode Island. I don't think I could find it. I don't know if it's a real spot, so I'm wondering if maybe just it was like an inside joke with some member of the staff, but it was just interesting. It's a member of the writing staff, Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And the phone number for what is like 800 head-on, I guess, 800. So head-on in terms of like head-on collisions. I thought that was really funny. So when Al gets to the attendant, it's like every option that he wants is the last option that he'd have to hit. So it's like, for Spanish, press 1. For French, press 2. Swedish, Japanese, and you went through the whole thing. It's like in English is like, number, 52 on the list.
Yep. It's so funny because, like you were saying, it is a bit of a time capsule, and it's hyperbole, of course, but we all remember calling those automated systems where you had to wait and press all these numbers. And I, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but I totally thought the writers missed an opportunity for a joke because, of course, there's going to be a French option. And we all know of Al's disdain for the French, but I don't know. I sort of feel like they missed a chance at a joke there for Al to crack some sort of shot at French people.
I remember in season 1, the last episode, that was the Johnny B. Good episode, Johnny B. Gone.
Yep.
He's like helping Bud like assemble something, and it's like all the instructions are in different languages. It's like they're in German, they're in Japanese, or something like that. And then I was like, oh, these are in French. It's like, well, more people we should have killed,
Yep.
Classic jokes.
Yep. And that was a perfect chance to throw one of those in there.
Now, so Bud goes outside and gets the crap kicked out of him by a Native American parade marching in front of his house.
What are the odds of running into a Native American pride parade marching half a block from our house?
Bud, you're going about this all wrong. Now, you keep trying to change the clothes that you wear. But what you really need is a new head. And while you're at it, a new body to put it on.
No. Thanks for caring. But this is it for me. I will neither seek nor accept a date from any woman for the rest of my life. Instead, I shall live out the rest of my days in the basement, as the gnome you've always said that I was. Goodbye forever.
Gee, I feel kind of bad.
Well, honey, you were pretty hard on him.
No, I'm fine with that, but I think I should have told him there's no third step.
Now, Chris, being from Texas, is this something that would be common? Like, in other words, I assume they're Native Americans in that part of, that part of the U.S. So is there like some animosity between the two groups?
No, well, at least not where I live. Now, Texas, I mentioned earlier a lot of Texas stereotypes. People don't realize just how huge Texas is. I live in the suburbs of Houston. Now, Houston is a lot different than like East Texas, which is a really rural country area. West Texas is like the desert, and then up in the Panhandle, like the very top part of Texas, where Amarillo and Lubbock. I wouldn't be surprised if there is some animosity up there, because that's close to Oklahoma, where a lot, the state of Oklahoma has a lot of reservations and things like that. But not anywhere near where I live. I mean, Houston, for example, despite all the stereotypes, Houston really isn't that much different than New York City or LA or any other big city, So not anywhere near where I live.
Yeah, just really spread out. I've been to Houston a few times, and I could just say it's like, you could drive 40 miles and you're still in Houston.
Well, sure, yeah.
All right, so Bud makes his way into the basement, and he's very upset. And Al stays on the phone, and all of a sudden, we hear these names of these defunct American car companies on the teleprompter.
Al, Bud is really upset.
Bud's upset. Listen to this.
If your car is a Pacer, press 61. If your car is a Studebaker, press 62.
He said that he is never dating again, and he wants to live in the basement forever.
Sounds like a good plan. Wished I thought of it.
If your car is a Hudson Hornet, press 67.
So Pacers, Studebaker, Hudson Hornet. A lot of these car companies were car companies that were still around like in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So again, I feel like, I've said this before, the writers of the show are paying homage to their childhood. A lot of this show, when you look at it in its entirety across the seasons, what you see is a lot of references to pop culture of the 50s and 60s. When these writers, people who were 40 years old in 1993, are writing about things that they remember from their childhood. So, over the course of 30 years, to them, like Studebakers no longer exist, Pacers, etc., don't longer exist in 1993. So here we are in 2020. I mean, Oldsmobile's gone, if we remember that from our childhood.
Yep.
We've seen some car brands, like Saturn was one, remember, like that sort of was born and died. The DeLorean. I mean, there's others, but it's just interesting. It's like the same way that things change for them, things have also changed for us, even though sometimes we think they haven't changed. They have changed.
Yeah. I was just thinking, is Pontiac still around? I mean, it is, but not like it was. I mean, I remember when.
No, you're right. That was also defunct.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big cars I liked as a kid was the Pontiac Firebird. I haven't seen one of those in a long time now.
If you build it, he will come.
That you, Kel? Mom? Dad? Buck? Oh, God. Is this how that rainbow wig guy got started?
So they make a comment about the rainbow wig guy. Now, this is interesting. The rainbow wig guy is somebody that we see a few times in season 8, or a few times in the show. And Chris, do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think so. I don't know if I caught that joke. Let me look at my notes here.
It's a very random and obscure reference, but it was a thing during that time. So we actually see a rainbow wig guy later on in season 8, the No Ma'am episode. But there's something here that we do need to talk about. So the rainbow wig guy was a guy named Roland Frederick Stewart, who was born in 1944, who was a fixture in American sports culture, best known for wearing a rainbow-colored Afro-style wig and holding up signs reading John 3:16 at stadium sporting events around the U.S. and overseas in the 70s and 80s. He is currently serving 3 life sentences in Mule Creek State Prison after being convicted of multiple kidnapping charges after a 1992 incident. So, again, this is the dark humor of Married with Children. And what John 3:16 is, I had to look this up. I'm not, I'm a Catholic, but I'm not necessarily familiar with the Bible. John 3:16 is, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life." So I don't know what that has to do with sports. I don't know what it has to do with a rainbow wig, but it's pretty funny.
Well, Luigi, let me ask you this: do you know what Austin 3:16 is?
No, I do not.
I don't know if you watched wrestling or not, but that was a very famous wrestler named Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I remember him, yes.
Kind of what started the Attitude Era and kind of Stone Cold's great run in the late 90s, early 2000s was, he said, Austin 3:16 says, "I just kicked your ass." And anyways, after he said that phrase once, not knowing that it was going to blow up, and like the next night on Monday Night Raw, half the people in the audience were holding signs that said Austin 3:16. And then, within a week, you saw merchandise everywhere, shirts, hats, everything that said Austin 3:16. And that was one of the things that really kicked off the Attitude Era of WWE now, but it was WWF wrestling back then. But anyways.
Yeah, okay. Oh, no, that's great. So, Bud's in the basement.
Bud?
Yeah, Ma.
What are you doing?
Building?
What are you building?
I don't know.
So why are you doing it?
So he'll come?
So who'll come, dear?
Him.
Oh.
I think we should call Janet Reno. She'll know what to do.
So the comment about Janet Reno has to do with the incident at Waco. Mm-hmm. And Waco, if I'm not mistaken, was in 1993. I think early in 1993, the whole Branch Davidian thing. So do you remember that, being a resident of Texas at the time?
I do remember it. It's obviously a very big, it was not a good situation. But my parents didn't let me watch that on the news because there was people being held captive, and there was a standoff, and a bunch of people ended up dying. And anyways, I was 8 years old at the time, so I was allowed to watch Married with Children, but not watch the news on Waco Siege.
Yeah, that was a siege, just for everyone, just to look it up very quickly, between February 28th and April 19th of 1993. The Branch Davidians were led by David Koresh, and they were a religious group. The federal government went in. It was a little bit of a debacle. I mean, you could look it up if anyone's more interested in that. But, again, the Married with Children writers are talking about what's happening in pop culture in 1993. So, Chris, here's an interesting piece of dialogue.
Oh, this is all my fault. I knew when he was a baby I should have gotten him a proper sitter. But, Buck was right there and the price was right.
So, you had I know it's a sort of like a little segue, but you were on The Price is Right. Maybe do you want to tell the fans a little bit about your big win there?
Yeah, sure. I don't want to bog the whole podcast down, but I did appear on The Price is Right recently, and I had a great deal of luck. I won just about $40,000 worth of prizes. I won a new car, a 6-day vacation to Australia, a bunch of home gym equipment, a bunch of kitchen stuff, kitchen countertop appliances, a giant boombox, all types of cool stuff. So that was one of my childhood dreams, to one day appear on that show. And if anyone is a Price is Right fan out there, you're welcome to go to YouTube and type in May 20th of 2020, and you'll see me on there. I was one of the first 4 to get called down, so it was quite an experience.
That's great. And, I did see you posted that on your Facebook page, and I did watch that, so
yeah,
that's great. I mean, I can remember probably some of my earliest memories are like being at home watching The Price is Right. Mm-hmm. So, and actually I joke with people a lot. Whenever someone says that it's like, oh, they're homesick or something like that, I say, don't forget, The Price is Right is on at 11.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep. That was one of those things you did in the the 80s and 90s. If you were homesick or during the summer, you watched The Price is Right, and for me, it was like chicken noodle soup and The Price is Right. with Bob
I
Barker.
I remember having the chicken pox when I was in kindergarten, and that was like, it was like the ritual I had. I was probably like homesick for a week or something like that, and just, like you said, chicken noodle soup, sitting in front of the TV watching The Price is Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, some of the costumes, just to go back to Bud, some of the costumes that he's wearing, they have costumes and dates next to them. So Billy Ray Bundy is 1993. Joey Buttafuoco is 1992. There's this reference to Grandmaster B for 1991. We'll come back to that in a minute. There's Indiana Bundy in 1990. Tito Bundy. So that's a reference to the Jacksons for 1989, and Butterace for 1988. Now, what's interesting about Grandmaster B was that Grandmaster B was done in season 6 during that whole series of episodes when Al was having a dream. Mm-hmm. Sort of, and when Al got out of the dream, he mentions Grandmaster B to Bud. But we don't actually get a lot of Grandmaster B plot lines after that. So that's a little interesting homage back to season 6.
Yeah, it sure is. I'm glad they included it there. But and it's kind of funny. I never really thought about that. But you're right. We don't get a lot of Grandmaster B after Al wakes up from the dream. It's a shame because, everybody loves Grandmaster B.
So we hear this voice.
If you build it, he will come.
So that obviously is from the 1989 American fantasy drama sports film Field of Dreams, written and directed by Phil Robinson, adapting from W.P. Kinsella's novel Shoeless Joe. It stars Kevin Costner, Amy Madigan, James Earl Jones, Ray Liotta, and Burt Lancaster in his final film role. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including for the Best Original Score, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Picture. So, do you remember much about that movie, Chris?
Yeah, I've seen the movie. It's kind of funny. When this episode aired, I watched it night of, and I had never seen the movie at that point. I remember asking my parents, I was like, what is it? If you build it, he will come. I was like, what is that? What does that mean? And they're like, it's from a baseball movie. I was like, ah. And I ended up watching, that movie because of this show.
Yeah. Now, what I thought interesting about this is, during the whole run of the show, they make a few references to this whole Shoeless Joe Jackson story. Season 5, Episode 4, The Unnatural. And there are some other references throughout the show. So very, very interesting that I guess somebody was a baseball fan or was really fascinated by this movie, because the story of Shoeless Joe is also talked about in 8 Men Out. I think that was like 1988 or 1989.
Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't have given him Pez and said they were vitamins.
Yeah, well, I bet girls would have dated him if I hadn't told everybody in school that he only had one buttock.
So, I know that if Dan's listening, he'll probably get a chuckle out of this one. I was in Austria about 2.5 years ago on vacation, and what I learned while I was there is that Pez is actually an Austrian candy. Pez is an abbreviation of, I know I'm going to butcher this, Pfefferminz, which is German for peppermint. So it's a candy that was first made in 1927 in Vienna. We cut back to Al, still on the phone.
Al, you got to do something about the boy.
Now, wait a second, Peg. I've gone this far. In just a few more minutes, I'm going to have my alternator now.
If your Dodge is still on the road, press 1. If your Dodge is on blocks, press 2. If your Dodge is on fire, press 3.
I think it's great. It's like, if your Dodge is on fire, press 3. So if you need an alternator, you still need an alternator, and your Dodge is on fire. What do you need it for?
I cracked up at that, man. The thing that really cracked me up, not to, I guess, jump the gun here, but the thing that really cracked me up there at the end is it said, if you'd like to speak to an operator, press 0.
Yes.
So
and he's asleep.
Yeah, he could have pressed 0 at any point and gone to the operator, which is, I think that's pretty much common knowledge nowadays. Most people know if you want to speak to an operator, you press 0. But you'll notice a lot of the companies have gotten really smart, and they've made it to where 0 doesn't go to the operator. It's more like press 7 to go to the operator, or press 5 to go to the operator or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I can't tell you, like, once these things started, these phone attendants started to be that you could talk to them, I would always scream into it, customer service. Because one of the things you have to know is that they also react to your emotions. So if you're angry, they try to get you to a person. Well, at least they did a few years ago. I don't know if that's one of the things that happens anymore. But I think it's kind of funny how that just continues. They want you to go through the phone attendant so that you don't talk to somebody. I think one of the things that annoys me the most is when it's like you've already provided them information up front, and then like you get a human being. It's like they're asking you, "Oh, excuse me, like what's your name? Like what are you calling about?" It's like, why did I do that at the beginning? To get routed to this place, right? It's like you should know by now.
Yep, and that's my thing. Like, usually by the time I get someone on a live person on the phone, I'm so irritated and so mad. But I'm like, I'm not one of those people that calls and takes it out on the operator. I know they're just doing their job, you know what I mean? But it's just like, it's so frustrating. It's like, I already gave you my name, my zip code, the last 4 of my social. Why do you have to ask again? Jeez.
Well, what do you mean you're not me? I mean, you look just like me. Hey, don't insult me, all right? I'm not you. Well, actually, I'm part of you. I'm the part of you that's cool. You're the rest. Well, why are you here? Because I can't stand it anymore. I mean, every year you trot me out to the ladies, full of hopes, and every year we come back with your tail between my legs. I'll be damned if I'm going to spend the rest of my life down here in this basement. So I'm here to teach you to be cool. Mommy! Oh, this is going to be easy.
Bud meets his alter ego. Now, this person is not credited, but we do know that his body double, his name is Bruce Fine. And he's an actor, and he plays the Bud-like character in Season 9's No Pot to Peas In. So, do you remember that episode? That's when there's a spoof of their life that ends up on the air.
Yep. Excellent episode. Was where Kelly sells them out there. But yeah, I was reading the notes you have here. That's so interesting. I got to tell you, this body double is amazing. It's amazing. I always wondered how they did that. Up until really today, I never knew. I always assumed it was a green screen or something, some sort of trick photography. Because you can splice it together. You have David Faustino stand on the left, stand on the right, that type of thing. But on the screen, where on the scenes where they're both, where they're both on camera at the same time, I had no idea how they did that. I always assumed it was some sort of green screen or mirror or something.
Yeah, and that's something, we take for granted nowadays, Chris, because if you think about it, once the show's run ended in 1997, I mean, stuff like CGI was still in its infancy. So, this was like sort of the last era where you still had to do a lot of work to try to do that on screen. Like, I'm thinking about the episode where Al is on the couch with his dad. That's the Brandy Brand episode when he wants his Playboys back.
Yep.
That had to have been done green screen. To get himself on that screen in order to do it. But to do it like quick and cheap would be like, well, they just from the camera, it's like you sort of cut and you're looking at the body double from the back.
Yep.
Right? And then you just keep switching that camera so until like you get the shot. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than trying to do green screen as it was back then. I mean, nowadays you would just CGI them in.
Yep.
Right? And you wouldn't know. Like, I know in that Star Wars thing, Carrie Fisher died, right?
Yeah.
So her last views, and I'm not a big Star Wars nut either, but I do know it's like, they had to, through CGI, they were able to recreate her on screen. But not something you could do back then.
Yeah, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I know the scene you're talking about. But by the way, did you notice, I don't know if you picked up on this, but it's kind of weird, but the body double looks amazing from the front, but that one clip where they show the body double from behind, I don't think that's the actor that you just mentioned. I think like they just got another body double to do that because they needed an extra shot or something. Did you notice it doesn't look like him? He looks too heavy set to be Bud. You know what I'm talking about?
I know that it's not him, but I mean in terms of like who it is, I have no idea. But your theory could very well be accurate.
I don't think that's that same actor. He looks way too chubby to be to be the same guy.
Yeah, and by the way, the legendary Annabelle Whitford, the the top of the top, the cream of the crop Married with Children fan in the world. You know, her note on this one was that this Bruce Fine and David Faustino had a chat over Instagram a few weeks ago. This we're talking about is May of 2020. Confirmed her theory that he was Bud's body double. So she was very happy to get that confirmation, you know, because she is the world's reservoir of Married with Children trivia.
Yep.
And according to her, you know, they've been friends ever since this time because, you know, Bruce Fine was his body double. So maybe this is the first time you're hearing this, everyone, here on the Married with Children podcast. So Jefferson comes in with Marcy, and Jefferson goes downstairs to talk to Bud.
Hi there, Bud. Hey, your mother says there's a little something that's bothering you. How about talking to old Jefferson about it? He thinks I'm not cool. No, we can't have that. Now, see here, Mr. Horsey. Bud Bundy is a friend of mine. You be nice to him, or there'll be no oats for you.
Please give me oats, Mr. Darcy. I won't be mean to Bud
There, Bud. I've taken care of it. You know what I used to do when I was your age and I was feeling down and out like this? I'd get me a woman. And we'd do it like animals in the car. It always made me feel better. You should try it, Bud. Here, it's on me.
So, Chris, what did you think about Jefferson giving Bud the condom?
Oh, well, two things. First of all, that Jefferson horse exchange thing he did, I thought was hilarious. It was just so corny and dumb that it was funny. You know what I mean? It's like, and when I watched this episode as a kid, that's what made the show entertaining to me, because I didn't understand most of the adult jokes. But the little scenes of, you know, that little exchange with Jefferson and the horse, I thought was funny. But I totally remember the condom scene as a kid. It's funny that you asked, because I had no idea what a condom was when I was 8 years old. So I remember asking my dad, "Hey, what was that Jefferson gave Bud?" And I think he told me it was
a
like,
balloon.
Well, I think he told me it was like a candy bar or something. I don't know. And I was like, "Why'd you give him a candy bar?" He's like, "I'll tell you when you're older," you know. But yeah, man, I thought that scene was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, no, that's I think a classic gold. I mean, a great setup, you know, for the payoff later on.
Yep.
So Bud's alter ego tries to highlight to Bud some of his highlights, and we get a montage.
Need some help? One good turn deserves another. I saw this movie where this mannequin came to life. So, if you can talk, please do.
Bud.
My God. You know my name. Do you also know what I like? Reginald Bundy, a critic for the Times. You know, I get so few chances to see films with the public. This time I want to watch a film exactly as the people do. So, if you don't mind... Well, guys, I guess you're on your own. One of you wants to go upstairs. Later, Gators.
Let's face it, we're with boys. Bud is a man. He knows how to treat a lady.
It's time for No Ma'am to take a little break in the Jiggly Room. I'm the DJ, and I'm gonna play a little bit of music that was on this week's episode of Married with Children.
I'm just a lonely boy, lonely
So the montage has 4 parts to it. So we have a scene from Season 5, Episode 6, Kelly Bounces Back. We have a scene from Season 7, Episode 5, What I Did for Love. The movie show, Season 7, Episode 21, as well as then a real callback back to Season 3, Episode 19, The Dateless Amigo. And the music we hear in the background is Lonely Boy, written and recorded by Paul Anka. It was released in 1959, and he sang this song in the film Girls Town. When it was released, it topped the Billboard Top 100 and became Anka's first song to do so. Billboard ranked it the number 5 song for 1959. We later hear this song in episode 18 in Get Out of Dodge.
Yeah, I've heard that song many times, and it's funny you mentioned that Get Out of Dodge episode. That's one of my favorites. It's a legendary episode.
So Bud's alter ego shows him this beautiful woman who pops up, and this is Libby.
So what's your point? My point is, you have no respect for women. I mean, you treat them as objects rather than real people. Look, I don't like it either, all right? But sometimes to get the babes to put out, you gotta pretend. Now, I'm gonna give you one last chance. Easy there, Froggy. Go slow. Show her what you've learned. And above all, respect her. Smooth move, Gilligan.
Now, Libby is an actress by the name of Michelle Nicholas. And Michelle Nicholas was just a babe, and she appeared in Babe Watch, Married with Children, and Babes, interestingly. So very appropriate.
Yeah.
She smacks the hell out of Bud, just like in the movie show. It's like he gets smacked clear across the room. So
I always wonder, how did they do that? Because that's not one of the dummies that, everybody knows that Married with Children, especially in the second half of the show, they have these dummies made up for Bud, Al, Griff, and Bob Rooney, and some of the others that we get after the No-Ma'am episode. But in this episode and the movie episode and some others, we see Bud and other people, that are stunt actors, of course. But how do they do that? Do they just launch them across the room and make sure the camera's there? Like, how do they do that?
Yeah, I'm really curious myself. I know, for example, people who work as stuntmen or stunt women in Hollywood, like they do that. Like we've seen that in Married with Children. Like the guy who plays Norris. I guess I don't know what happens, but maybe at some point we might be able to interview some of these people and find out, like behind the scenes, how did you get launched across the room?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you really think about it, just from a production standpoint, like I'm watching the scene right now, actually. So all he'd have to do basically is just jump across the camera backwards and just have a mat there where you can land. And stunt guys are used to they're able to take a fall without breaking their back, I guess. So it's just funny though, because traditionally we think about Married with Children, we think about the dummies, flying around, but in quite a few of these, it's definitely not a dummy.
Well, they didn't launch Kelly, right? So there you go.
Yeah, man. Why did we never get Kelly? That's a shame.
So Al finally gets his alternator.
Your responses indicate that you own a Burntsy and a mid-century Dodge with 800,000 miles. To verify this information, press 1. Hello, Mr. Bundy. A live operator will be with you in a moment.
Hey, a real person's going to be on with me in a minute.
That's nice, dear.
Help me! Help me! He's trying to merge with me!
I'll save you, baby! Al, call the police.
Bud?
Do you need someone to talk to?
Mom, pull him off me! He's taking over! Mom, pull him off me!
Well, I don't know, honey. He's really, really big. I better just go get your daddy to help me. You hold him there. I'll be right back.
Hello, Mr. Bundy.
Operator, you're alive!
Barely. But it beats selling Time Life books. Now, if you'll just give me your credit card number, we'll send your part right out.
Al, you have to help our son.
Not now, Peg. I got a live person on the phone here. Oh, man. In a couple hours, I'm going to be tooling in my Dodge. Operator, I got to go get my wallet. Out of the way, woman!
One of the things funny about this line of dialogue is that your responses indicate that you own a burnt Sienna mid-century Dodge with 800,000 miles. To verify this information, press 1. Hello, Mr. Bundy. So I guess he's the only one in the world who has this.
Yep.
So the car color is listed as burnt Sienna. It's a 1974 Dodge in the Old Insurance Dodge episode last season, and it's a 1971 Dodge in season 10, turning Japanese. So for our continuity people, they're still not able to provide us with continuity on the Dodge. Later on, we do find out it's the wrong color, but we still haven't gotten there.
And I loved how they mentioned that, it has 800,000 miles. From continuity standpoint, that at least shows that, I don't know if they had the million mile Get Out of Dodge episode written already at this point or what, but I guess we're to assume from this point he drives about 200,000 miles in the next few months.
Yeah, and that's a great point that you make because, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking about episode 18, I believe, is the million mile Dodge episode. That is Get Out of Dodge. So we have to believe that in 16 weeks he drove 200,000 miles. So, again, we'll check continuity on that. Now, when Al gets the operator on the phone, he says, "Operator, you're alive." And you hear the woman's voice. She says, "Barely, but it beats selling Time Life books." Now, I don't know if you remember this, Chris, but the voice of that woman sounds like the woman who did those Time Life book commercials back then.
Oh, yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Right? So Time Life was a company founded by Time Inc. in 1961 as a book marketing division. Its name derives from Time and Life magazines, two of the most popular magazines of the era, both owned by the company. Sellers of book series that would be mailed to households in monthly installments, operating as a book sales club. And, this was the public's pre-internet internet. So again, that was the way that people would market things. You remember, you belonged to a book club, or you'd have like these little things. It's like the CD of the month, the book of the month. They'd send them to you, and you'd pay they would tell you it's like you're paying at a discounted price for a book, or CD or something like that. Or you remember those commercials for if you wanted to hear the greatest hits of the '60s, they would mail them to your house. I don't know if you remember these things, but it was really popular, at least in the area of the U.S. where I was.
Yeah, I remember those. It was those late night commercials. And I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like at least until the last few years, those commercials were still playing. Now everybody pretty much streams everything. Nobody wants a hard copy of a CD or a DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, because pretty much everybody streams stuff. But I feel like those commercials you're talking about were playing up until just the last handful of years, really.
Right. Yeah. I think it probably, if you're of a certain age that's maybe technophobic, there's still people who like, for example, CDs in their car or, encyclopedias or stuff. And again, usually it's the older crowd, although not always necessarily, but it's just that you see less and less of that today. But
yeah.
It was still very much a way of life at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So poor Al, he finally's got the woman on the phone, and, Kelly hangs up the phone.
Bud, it's never too late to take vitamins.
Oh, I had my Pez this morning, Mom.
Honey, about that Pez.
Damn job, damn life, damn diet. Daddy says never waste electricity.
Hi, Pumpkin!
Hi, Daddy.
I got a real person.
Good, Daddy.
great payoff on that Pez joke.
Dude, I got to tell you something. When Al set that phone down and walked away, was there any doubt in your mind that someone was going to hang up? I didn't know if it was going to be Peg that does it or Bud that walks in and does it unsuspectingly, or maybe Marcy comes in and takes it as an opportunity to, hurt Al, because we all know they feud a lot. But there was no doubt somebody was going to hang that phone up.
But what just going back to Bud now, what I don't understand is he and his alter ego merge, right? So he comes up and he says, "It's cool. Everything's cool now." So you would think there would be some continuity at this point, saying it's like, well, does this mean that Bud's going to be a cool person from now on in season 8 and onward?
Yeah.
So I mean, again, watching it in its first run. So Chris, you watched it in its first run as me. It's like, okay, like what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, sort of when I got out of this. Like, when I saw that episode the first time, I'm like, okay, does this mean that, something's going to change with this character? At this point in time, I remember I was starting my sophomore year in high school.
Yeah.
So I'm like, like, what's happening? And then, we get to the next episode, and then just Bud is Bud.
Yep.
So, so, like, I'm wondering, like, what was the purpose of the episode?
Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of weird. And, and I know Alex and Jamie and Dan have touched on this quite a bit in the past, how once we get to the point where Bud starts getting laid, at least semi-regular occasion, the joke doesn't make sense anymore a lot, as far as him struggling with women, but it's still funny. Like, we still laugh at the joke because it's hilarious when him and Kelly are going back and forth at each other and girls are slapping him and stuff. But really, if you think about it, like if you think about this chronologically and you think about a season as being we'll call it a year or whatever, at this point in the show, Bud is getting laid fairly regularly, I would say, wouldn't you? I mean, from from being a total loser, I mean, he's definitely getting, and not just like getting laid, he's getting like some really beautiful women. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So it makes you wonder. It's like, what are his tactics? I mean, like at one point, like for example, he's like a nude model. I mean, he's doing some very unorthodox things in order to accomplish that. It's just a very interesting like construct. Technically, if he was a loser, right? I mean, like he would be in the basement and he wouldn't be, he would be with ISIS.
Yep. Hey, by the way, and I could totally be wrong because I haven't sat down and watched season 7 recently, at least in chronological order. But is this the first episode where we see Bud in the basement, or was he in the basement before, as far as living there or like moving in?
Well, you're right. Well, technically, he hasn't moved into the basement yet.
That's true. He hasn't moved in. Okay.
Season 7, when Al is working out, that was the Till Death Do Us Part episode. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about that in the last episode. Yeah, this is probably the first time that Bud... Yeah, I think you're right. This is the first time that Bud is in the basement.
Okay, because I totally think that was a great idea, having Bud... I mean, like you said, he hasn't actually moved down there yet, but he's down there, and the inference is that he's going to be moving down there at some point. I think that's a good idea for his character. You know what I mean?
So finally, Al is really frustrated, and he starts hearing things, and he hears...
If you build it, he will come. If you want them to build it for you, press
1. I thought that was a great way of rounding out the joke.
It was, man. It was. And as always, I laugh, but I feel sorry for Al because we've all, at some point in our lives, I think all of us have been on hold with one of those automated services, and we've gone through it, and either A, we get disconnected, or B, our battery dies on our phone, or something happens where we lose them. And you just like, I don't know if you're like me, but I start cursing. I'm like, I just wasted 45 minutes and I have nothing to show for it. In Al's case, it was several hours. But
well, I can sort of sympathize with Al being 42, like I'm young enough to know technology, like in the modern way of life, but I'm old enough to remember the old way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being like on these, being put on hold years ago. I was probably like in my teens, and it was like before people had mobile phones. And I remember like cordless phones weren't something that we had in my house. So it was like you're on the phone, you really got to take a whiz, and it's like it's like if the person comes on the phone while I'm in the bathroom, like after like 3 seconds they're going to hang up and you got to start over again. So It's like, do I just wait here, maybe like wet myself, or do I risk it? And inevitably, like I feel like, just like Al, it's like whatever choice I made was always the wrong choice.
Yep.
So, and luckily, at least today with a mobile phone, it's like you can put it on mute and go into the bathroom or go outside or answer if someone rings your door, it's a delivery person, you can do that. But it was a real frustration back in 1993 for a lot of people. So I can sympathize.
Yep, definitely. Hey, one thing we didn't really talk about, the set of as far as the set of the basement. I really liked that. Did you notice the 8 tracks and vinyls in the background and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of those are callbacks to some of Al's things. And again, like what would be in a basement? You remember the Vinnie Verducci episodes? Like Al has his vinyl collection in the basement by the furnace.
Yep.
Right? I mean, he talks about having 8 tracks, like an 8 track of Hotel California.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, like, that's what Al Bundy's basement would look like.
Absolutely.
No Ma'am will be right back to wrap up this week's review. Be sure to join their Facebook group page for all the podcast news and updates. Be sure to subscribe to them on the Apple Podcast app, and please leave a review telling them what you think of the show. To subscribe to their YouTube channel, just go to channels and search up Married with Children podcast. Join their Patreon and support your favorite podcast with a small monthly donation. You can email them at marriedwchildrenpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for checking out this review.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. So, Chris, how many personas do we need to attract a girl do you give for this episode?
Well, I think I'm going to go with 3.5 personas in an attempt to attract a girl for this episode. I liked it. I thought it was funny. It's a funny episode. I thought it had some really good callbacks. I thought the body double was amazing. I'm really glad we did this podcast because I learned that actually was a body double and not just a green screen. But I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorites or like a legendary episode or anything like that. But I did like some of the continuity things as far as referencing the 800,000 miles on the Dodge and seeing the basement again and seeing the 8 tracks and vinyls and such down there. So I'm going to give it 3.5 personas in an attempt to attract a girl.
Great rating. I'm also going to give it 3.5 personas needed in order to attract a girl. Like you, Chris, I enjoyed the episode. It's got some great jokes. I feel like the whole call attendant thing was funny. It was probably a little overplayed, but I think it needed to be overplayed in order for it to be funny. So I go back and forth on that. But it was solid. Not one of my top episodes, but definitely a good episode, maybe better than average episode. And I think that's partly reflected by having Stacey Lipp and Michael Moy as the writers on that. Mm-hmm. I was very pleased with it. Again, looking at it objectively, and what I want to say is when I discovered this podcast, I've always been a fan of the show. I started watching it when I was 8 years old in its first run, season 1, episode 1 at the Fox premiere. And I always enjoyed this show, watched it all the time. What always drew me was it's like unorthodox humor, sort of thumbing its nose at traditional things like, Christmas or, holiday, where they always try to take the anti-approach. So, the anti-holiday approach. So I appreciate the humor. I appreciate, the construct. But I think for myself, it's like once things get played out, it's no longer fresh.
Right.
And, I think, as you start getting into these later seasons and the freshness of the show starts to wear down because it's like almost the same joke over and over again. So I think it gets harder for them as writers to entertain us.
Yep.
Because, because you have to dig into the well. I mean, I think injecting it with a lot of pop culture helps. I mean, the whole joke about, like the Janet Reno joke or the Joey Buttafuoco joke, or, I think all it's great, but, they definitely have to work a lot harder to get a 5, to give me for me to give a 5.
Absolutely.
But I really appreciate, when I discovered the podcast, Alex and his crew really made me start looking at the show a different way. Like, I always wanted it for entertainment value. I was always interested in the writing and the jokes. Now it's like, we're looking at who the casts are, like, the sets, and we're really taking a critical eye. It's like, it's not only is the joke funny, is it recycled? So I really have to thank them for that, and thank them for the opportunity. And, and Chris, I have to give you a lot of credit. I mean, when you discovered this podcast, you went back and went on YouTube and provided comments to every single episode that Alex posted. So that was one hell of an undertaking.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I discovered it, I went through the whole series. I think you guys were in the beginning of season 6 at the time, probably on about the 3rd or 4th episode of season 6. I caught up from season 1 all the way to that point in about 3 months, which is crazy when you think about it. But yeah, I totally agree with everything you were just saying about the writing. I think as far as I guess a lot of people feel that the seasons 10 and 11, particularly their struggles as far as the quality of the show or whatever. I think it's a combination of what you just said and something that I believe it was Alex that pointed out at the very end of season 7, as far as Ron Levitt leaving the show. When you lose one of your co-creators, you lose 50% of the ideal and the identity, so to speak. And then as you go along,
the magic juice. Right?
Every show that's great has that special something that others don't. It's hard to identify exactly what it is. And losing Ron Levitt, and then just combining that with there being so many episodes, inevitably, no matter who you have at the helm, you're going to start to lose some of the freshness. But I feel like one of the really good things about the latter seasons, and we'll talk more about this as we go along, is the writing may not have been quite as good as the earlier seasons, but the characters and the pop culture was in some cases better. I mean, we get No Ma'am, we get Bob Rooney, Ike, Griff, Officer Dan, we get Gary, at the shoe store, we get Miranda Veracruz de la Hoya de Cardenal. I'm sure I butchered that, but you know who I'm talking about. We get all these characters that these are great characters. I mean, and I feel like that gave the show an extra jolt, an extra juice, a little bit more gas in the tank to run for a few more seasons. You know what I mean? So.
Oh no, absolutely. And one thing I'll say about season 8, just looking a little ahead, is that season 7, and I said this in the season 7 wrap-up show. Season 7, most of the action happens within the confines of the house. In season 8, they need to venture outside the home to get more storylines. So now you have more storylines of things happening in the shoe store and all these other characters coming in, and I think that's what made the show last a few more seasons. I think if they tried to keep it in the home, probably season 8 might have been the last season for them. Yeah,
definitely, I agree 100%.
Okay.
All right, I said I was going, and I'm going. But let me tell you something. I'm not going to just disappear. You'll see me again. Wherever a fat woman shoves a smelly foot in front of some poor guy's face, I'll be there.
And now, the last word on this episode. Calling in from his 2/3 acre retirement property on Lake Chickamaucomico that the government hasn't yet padlocked, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the creator and executive producer of the Married with Children podcast, Mr. Alex Edwards.
So nice. Here I am, retired. It's fall. We have a whole long fall season ahead of the Married with Children podcast. These guys are doing great. A lot of fun listening to both of these shows so far. Glad to drop in and give my 2 cents. So, what do I think of Proud to Be Your Bud? Let me tell you, I love this episode. I think it's really stuck with me my whole life. You know, starting off with the greasy handprint on Kelly's ass. I mean, that guy was like reaching, he was facing her and reaching over the back of her. I don't know. I forgot how he slapped her ass. Something weird. But that grease is lucky enough to stay there all day. All of Bud's personas were hilarious and halfway relatable. Because I remember going to school all the time in September, and I always thought, you know, well, no one knows me this year. You know, they do, but I thought, you know, maybe I'll reinvent myself or whatever. Or I'll be James Dean this year, or this year I'm going to be like Zach Morris, or this year I'm going to be like Dylan, something, whatever was cool to me at the time. I'm sure when I was 12, I thought I was going to go to school and be like Bart Simpson. So, and I mentioned it being fall, and when they see Bud, I think, what was it, Al says, it must be fall. Like, perfect timing. Fall hit yesterday, and then Al says that, it must be fall in this episode that's released today. So, that's pretty amazing timing. Al calling 1-800-HEAD-ON, and it has 1 million options on the automated system. That is just a great play on those things, man. It's never that bad, but it is just as annoying as it kind of comes off on this episode, so that was a great play on that. I did always wonder why Bud has all his old personas on display. Like, for what reason would you do that? To stare at them and reminisce? You know, Bud building that structure in the basement was pretty cool, and then he keeps saying, so he'll come. Who will come, honey? He will. The split screen was done well, but I think Bud's double needs to drop 30 pounds, because that dude has like a thick head and neck, and whole body is like thick. Like, if you're going to be Bud Bundy's like stunt double or whatever he was, I know it was just this episode, but he, you know, even came back for the other one, but I'm wondering if like he did any of those stunts where Bud was like slapped or thrown or whatever. I know they eventually go to dummies and stuff, but I wonder, you know, at this point, probably not. I'm probably just overthinking that. I have to make some observation here. Come on. Al trying to hang himself with the phone cord. That could be a great meme, you know, talking about, you know, when someone calls you or when your ex tries to get back together with you and gives you a call, whatever. So maybe I'll make that. I find it interesting that Peg is truly concerned for Bud in this episode. That's pretty rare. She doesn't have much concern for her children in any way, shape, or form. We get that cool clip of Bud Bundy's greatest hits, you know, best of his girl failures. I love how the automated call system knew it was Al because of the mileage and car he entered. So the climax of this episode is cool, you know, like Bud trying to merge with his loser self, and Al finally getting through to the live operator. You know, there's like a big crescendo here, you know? It's like, it's the two things. You wonder what this cool Bud's doing. You wonder if Al's ever going to get through, and they both come together at the same time. It's a nice moment. So Bud merged with himself, so it's like, well, so are we going to see like a new cool Bud from here on out? Like, is he ever going to slip up and be a loser again? I don't really recall, like, in a major way, if he was nothing but cool from here on out. I know he definitely scored with a lot more babes, but I don't know if he was cool the whole time from here on out. I doubt it. Al goes to get his credit card and puts the phone down. Kelly comes in and hangs it up because you don't want to waste electricity. I mean, wow. What an ending. I mean, just great writing, great concepts all together. I found that interesting what they did with Bud. It's a very interesting concept. Totally farcical. You know, we all know the show's not grounded anymore. But, you know, again, it's not grounded at all. And if this happened in season 1, it would be odd, or season 2 or 3 for that matter. But it just works here in season 8. You know, that will be said a few times, you know. A lot of the things that they try to do in 7 just didn't work, even though they were going for the same attempt. Here they did it right. So far. That might not continue as the season goes on, but so far, I like it. 4.5 out of 5.
That's Al, folks.
All right, so thank you very much, Chris. This has been great. This is our inaugural podcast. I had a great time. Thank you very much. I want to thank all the listeners out there. Love to hear your comments if you want to comment on the Facebook page. Again, I want to thank Alex and Dan and Jamie and JP and Jerry and everyone who participated in this in the past for passing the torch over to us. We'd love to have any and all of them on as guest hosts, scheduling permitting, and if they'd like to. But it's been great, and we hope that you enjoy this, and you tune in next week. So next week there'll be another crew who'll be reviewing episode 4 from season 8. So Kelly is back as the Verminator, Bud is off to the frat house, and a run of good fortune convinces Al that the Bundy curse which dictates that every silver lining hides a thundercloud, is about to strike him down. So again, tune in next time. Same Bundy time, same Bundy